Welcome back. In a previous video, we learned how to move an object around on the screen based on the amount of tilt that was being applied to the device, whether it was along the x-axis or along the y-axis. Now, when I was playing around with learning how to do that, I was thinking it was kind of odd that if, for example, I was creating an app that had a rocket ship flying, and I tilted it to the right, and it was pointed to the right, it would look like it was flying right. But if I tilted it to the left, then it would look like it was flying backwards. So I wanted to learn how to modify it so that the image would switch, so it would always look like it was flying in the correct direction. And this is where this tutorial came from. So I've created some very simple images, as you can see here. We've got a right arrow, a left arrow, and one that I've just called arrow, even though it's really just a rectangle. And I'm going to be using that in one example as the starting image. So if it's not going right, it's not going left, it's just in one direction. It hasn't moved yet. All right. Now there's two different ways you can do this, using a rotate feature where it just rotates the image to face a different direction. That works fine. In this case, the arrows look the same if I were to take it and rotate it 180 degrees. And then I'll show you how to do it if you actually have two different images that you want to switch between. All right. So I know that I'm going to need some variables. And the first variable I want to deal with is arrow. So that's going to be the image that's showing on the screen at the time. I know my image is going to be moving around the screen, so I'll need to deal with an x and a y coordinate. So we'll introduce arrow x and introduce arrow y. Now we want to give our image some starting coordinates. So let's say arrow x is equal to 0 and arrow y is equal to 0. And we're going to add in the arrow, the right-hand arrow on the screen. So we'll call that arrow equals view add images right.png, and we'll locate it at arrow x and arrow y coordinates. There we go. All right, now we're just going to test that and make sure everything's working fine. Excellent, so our image shows up on the screen and it's the right-hand arrow pointing to the right. Okay. In the previous video, we learned the code for accessing the accelerometer's tilt value. So we're just going to go ahead and plug that in here. I'll quickly explain it as I go. But we'll introduce a variable called tilt x. So that's going to store the information of the tilt value for the x. We used ACCX for the accelerometer x. It really doesn't matter what you do in the previous video. All right, so introduce tilt y. So tilt x will get the tilt value for x, and tilt y will get the tilt value for y. So then we want to set the information for our x coordinates. So we want to get our x variable or x coordinate for the image arrow, and we want it to add it to 1/100th of the tilt value. And we want to do the same thing for the y. We want to get the y coordinate for arrow and add that to 1/100th of the y, the tilt value for y. Again, remember from the last video, you can change that 100, make it bigger, make it smaller to change whether or not it's moving faster or slower. All right, now we want to set the boundaries so that it doesn't fly off the screen. So if arrow x is greater than or equal to 1024, then make it equal to 1024. If arrow x is less than or equal to 0, then make arrow x equal to 0. If arrow y is greater than or equal to 768, then make arrow y equal to 768. And if arrow y is less than or equal to 0, then make arrow y equal to 0. All right. Now we have to tell it to actually show the image at the new set of coordinates. You set xy we want to put the image arrow, relocate it to whatever the newest X and Y coordinates are. Save that, and then we will view it to make sure that it makes sense. So right now, when I run my program, it goes to the right, it's bounded, but when I go backwards, it still stays the same. We cannot, it's not switching direction, so it looks like it's flying backwards. So we just have to add a little bit of code in order to make that work. So we come back into the if statements, right above the view set xy. So we put the boundaries on there, but we want to say if tilt x is less than 0, that means if your device is sitting flat and then you tilt the left side, you're making that tilt value less than 0, then what we want to do is view, set, rotate, image arrow by 180 degrees. So now when I run the program, I go this way, and then when I go backwards it switches, but then when I switch to the right again, it doesn't switch back because we haven't told it to switch back. We told it to switch to the left, rotate it to the left. So what we have to do is put in a condition that says if tilt x is greater than 0, then what we want to do is view set that rotate of image arrow and put it to 0 degrees. So that's rotate it backwards so that it's at 0 degrees. So we'll go ahead and view that again. So that is one option that you can do. That's the rotation. The other option is to have it actually switch between images. So we're going to have to modify our code just a little bit. To start, let's load the images we want to use into memory. So we're going to image add, images, left.png, image add, images right.png, image add, images arrow.png. Alright, so now because we've loaded this image in here, because we're switching between images, we need to do the image add. We're going to take this one out here and we're going to replace it with the variable listed that we're going to assign to this one. So let's call this one first image. So that means we can take this out here and replace it with first image, which means we need to introduce first image. Now, let's go ahead and assign variables to these other two. So arrow right, arrow left, and then we'll go ahead and introduce arrow right and arrow left. Okay, so all our red underlines are gone. So now when we run our program, you should expect to see that rectangle at the coordinate 0, 0. And that's exactly what we end up with. Excellent. Now if I tilt it, because I haven't changed any of the other code, you can't tell, but that when I move it backwards, this is actually rotating backwards. Okay. So let's head on down to the bottom of the screen and change the last little bit of code. So we come down here and we said if it's tilted to the left, rotate the image 180 degrees. If it's tilted to the right, rotate the image back to 0 degrees. Well, we don't want it to rotate the image. We want it to actually change the image. So instead of rotate, we're going to have it say view set image. We want to change image arrow to image arrow left. And we want it to change if tilted to the right, view set image and change arrow to arrow right. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how that affects our app. So we start with the rectangle there. Again, you can change that to whatever image you want, even if it's the one to the right, it doesn't really matter. So we go to the right, points to the right, we go to the left, it points to the left, and now we have a switching image. Now it'd be a lot more obvious if you had two different images, but this works. So you can see those same dots that I mentioned before. This time, when we switch it to the other side, you'll see the dots are in the bottom left-hand corner, because I'm actually just switching between two different images. I could switch arrow left to be the smiley face that we were using, so that when it was tilting to the left, it would show the smiley face. When it was tilting to the right, it would show this. They don't have to be related images at all. It's just switching between two images. So hopefully now you have a better understanding of how to make an image switch if you're tilting your device. Now you can go ahead and change that so it will switch when you tilt it up and down as well. It is completely up to you. I can't wait to see what you come up with.